Okay, here's that moment of truth. That moment of truth where the internet gives me permission to have another day. And you know me, I have to see it. And we have to wait a little longer. We have to wait a little longer these days because of the new system. It takes a little longer for the stream to say, yes, the internet has given you permission, Ron. The internet, there we go. Rockfin. Rockfin. We're alive on the Rockfin. What about, and we're alive on the YouTube. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon to everyone where it's afternoon where you're at. Good morning to all my fellow West Coasters. Good evening. If it's evening where you're at, it's evening where my guest is at. And to everyone in the future, solve climate change for the rest of us. Australia, New Zealand, you're in the future. You're a day ahead. Climate change, please. We're counting on you. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. Show them some love during this pandemic. And Iran tea is hopefully coming soon. They have amazing teas. Monk's Blend, one of my personal favorites. Our friends over at triageoil.com, TRIAGE oil.com. Trendy name, makes topical pain oil for your body. It works wonders on my neck. Check it out. And Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to get all the content from all the streamers and lefty creators you know and love. I'm up there on their platform. They update it twice a day. So to learn more and subscribe to everything they got going on and to join their Discord community, you can check them out online at independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. And I always got to mention, I did their theme song. And if you want your own theme song, patreon.com/Ron Placone for a give what you can level. Without further ado, I am so excited about my guest today. I have been a fan of this guy since I want to say 2005. So almost 20 years I've been a fan of this guy. He is a punk poet. He's been doing his thing a long time. Please welcome to the show, Attila the Stockbroker. Attila, what's up, man?
Hi, yeah, nice to have you. 2005, eh? So that's 25 years into my start, because I started in 1980, shouting poetry in between bands at punk gigs, and just went on from there. And obviously, I'm also a musician. I've got a band called Barnstormer 1649. We combine early music and punk. But obviously, we haven't done anything. No, I haven't done anything in terms of live work. In fact, for it's coming up a year. It's a year on Sunday. On a year on Sunday, I'm doing my first anniversary live stream, my first anniversary lockdown live stream, because my last gig was at Katie Fitzgerald's in Stourbridge in the West Midlands in England on March the 7th last year. And of course, a couple of weeks later, far too late, lockdown came in, and none of us have done gigs ever since. And the funny thing for me is, I'm as Luddite. I don't know whether you know what do you do the term Luddite in the States?
Yeah.
It basically
Yes.
means primitively incompetent at anything to do with technology.
Yeah.
And I was like that. I did not know one way around a light. I didn't know my ass from my elbow, but I sat there and determinedly, with iron discipline, worked out a way to stream live to my 35,000 Facebook followers. I don't do anything really apart from Facebook. I don't really use YouTube, or I've got some followers on Twitter, but I don't really do anything on there because I'm not into just general abuse. I like to be intelligent. And I don't YouTube. I don't really understand. I've got lots of videos on there. Lots of people put my stuff up on there, but I don't use it. But Facebook's my thing, because I not only do performance. Obviously, I'm a writer. I'm a journalist. I write blogs, regular blogs, and I've got to say, reach tens of thousands of people, and that's brilliant. And thanks very much for having me on. We obviously have a great mutual friend in the great David Rovics.
Yes.
Originally from the East Coast, but now living in Portland, Oregon. I've toured with him twice. Toured the States with him twice. In total, I've played in America 4 times. And I've been all over the world. And yeah, I've been doing this. Last year was my 40th anniversary as Attila the Stockbroker. And just to show it up here now, actually published next month is my collected works, Heart on My Sleeve, collected poems and song lyrics. 40 is published by Cherry Red Books, which is the book, obviously the book division of Cherry Red Records, who you may have heard of. They're a fairly big indie label in the UK who've put out many of my albums. I mean, I've done 40 sort of CDs and LPs, as well as 8 books of poetry and my autobiography in 2015. So, I've been doing this a long time, and it's a great privilege to earn your living doing what you love. That's what I've got to say. So there's me, I just talk. So tell us about you. Tell us about yourself. Tell us Tell us what you think of Joe Biden. Tell us what you think of. Tell us what you think of Brexit. Tell us what you think of Boris Bellin Johnson.
That's
And
what I want to ask you. I want to ask you about all that stuff.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't, no one wants to know they know what I think. They watch me. I mean, they want to know what you think. So,
right, good.
well, I want to tell you, it's funny you bring up the whole Luddite thing because I don't know if you remember this, but I first heard about you from the song Guy Fawkes' Table,
Yeah,
which
sure.
is that's one of your songs. That's one of my favorite songs. Period. It's one of my favorite songs. It will be on. It was always on my iPod when those were a thing, and I
Just explain. Can I just plug in and explain? I wrote that the day after the British Labour government voted to basically, lick Bush's ass and go into coalition to blow up a lot of innocent people in Iraq, on allegedly because they had weapons of mass destruction, and they were Islamist terrorists. Even though, as everybody with a brain knows, Baathism and Islamism are deadly enemies, and all that actually happened was to facilitate ISIS and the whole disaster which is happening now. In exactly the same way that in the 80s and early 90s, Brzezinski, mobilized the so-called Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the nasty communists. Sorry to mimic your accent there for a minute. And of course, all that did was bring about the original birth of Al Qaeda. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, and that song is just so powerful because it's, it points out just the hypocrisies of a political party that you think has your back, but really doesn't. And I kind of I rewrote it to make it applicable to the Republicans and the Democrats here in the United States. And I sent it to you. This was a while ago. Like I sent it to you, and I'm like, hey, I did this thing. I'm a big fan. And you emailed me back and you said, I can't figure out downloading this, but I'm sure it's great. And that was the extent of it. So you never got to listen to it. But
no, I'm sorry. I mean, I can do that now. I mean, there was before lockdown. Lockdown is I've actually. I mean, for someone with COPD, hope you know what that is in the States. It's a lung condition caused by inhaling people's smoke for 25 years or whatever before the smoking ban came in. But for someone with, I've had to be very careful. But I've done a lot of writing and I've learned tech. I've learned more tech in the last year than I ever thought I would ever learn in my life. Because I'm a live performer. I've been out there, for 40 years doing about 100 gigs a year. And suddenly I can't do any anymore. So what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to broadcast online. But first, I've got to learn how to do it. So not only did I learn how to broadcast, how to do Facebook Live and download stuff and all that, I couldn't download anything or anything before. I mean, I was hopeless, but I've really, really learned a lot. I mean, I am from the generation. It's a bit of a cliche. I know I'm 63. I'm from the generation where it doesn't come naturally. But I'm motivated and I work very hard, so I just put my mind to it. And then I mean, please send me that again, Ron. I'd love to listen to it, and I'll be able to listen to it now. So that'd be good.
I will. Well, I tweeted in for a Zoom show a little less than a year ago. It was like something I kind of threw in the repertoire. So I definitely will. And thank you. It's it's such an amazing song and one of my favorites. If you had to update it for right now, what do you think would be in it?
Well, I mean, it is ridiculous what has happened. I mean, we nearly got there in 2017, where Corbyn came much closer than anyone possibly believed to actually winning. And it turns out in the end that he was sabotaged by his own party, by the right wingers in his own party. I mean, the inability of the left to form an alliance and actually work together is something that has just irritated me. Well, it's more than irritating, it's devastating, because of course we have this electoral system which is first past the post. So basically, you can get a majority in government because we have a multi-party system. I'm sure you all know this. You can get a majority in government with about 38% of the vote, and that's what the Tories do constantly because they're united and everyone else is split. Now, my perspective is, within reason, that you just stick together. And I was in the early years of Blair. I was going, well, Blair's better than the Tories. A bucket of sick, a bucket of vomit is better than a swimming pool full of vomit. So let's go with the lesser amount of vomit. It'd be nice to have no vomit at all, but if you're going to have vomit, then let's have as little vomit as possible. But then obviously the Iraq war happened, and after that I couldn't stomach it anymore. So I wrote Guy Fawkes' Table, and then we went on, and obviously Blair went, and the Tories got back in, and then along came Eventually along came first Ed Miliband, who was pretty good, and then Corbyn. It was unbelievable, but he got elected and he galvanised everybody, and we went out there, and I rejoined the party at that point. I'd been expelled before, years before, but I rejoined the party and we really started to do things. And then, of course, the entire weight of the establishment came down on us. All kinds of dirty tricks. I mean, the whole anti-Semitism thing, you know, and that I've got to say, you know, being completely even-handed about this, there are elements in the Labour Party who are, yeah, I mean, a small amount of people who are anti-Semitic by my definition, in that they've got all these Rothschild conspiracy bollocks and all the rest of it. Incidentally, am I allowed to swear on this? Is that all right?
Oh yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Inadvertent, if I say testicles inadvertently, I mean, or foreskin or Crystal Palace, which is the football club.
You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want.
That's fine. Yeah, I thought so. So that's cool. So yeah, I mean, it's a real disappointment. Starmer today, but I mean, responding to the Tories' sort of budget for the pandemic, because it was our budget just now. I mean, you know, Rishi Sunak, the Tory Chancellor, was far more ambitious in his programme to basically keep everything going than Starmer was suggesting. I mean, so you got the Tories outflanking Labour on social provision, and that is just beyond belief. Obviously, we're in pretty unusual times right now, but even so, you know, even so, I've got to say, looking over there, I just couldn't believe what's been going on for the last few years. I mean, seriously, I mean, again, on the bucket of sick rather than the swimming pool full of sick basis, I was really celebrating when Biden won. Now, you may well tell me that I shouldn't be, but I honestly, anything, I don't care. Anything was better than that absolute unspeakable orange nightmare. I mean, and the way that he empowered the sort of far right in this country and indeed over there was just beyond belief. And somebody's got to do, you know, they've got to do something about it. I mean, seems to me quite clearly, two things have got to happen. Here's me talking about your country now. Biden, I'm not saying he's going to do it, and you know, I doubt if he will, because he is part of the military-industrial complex, and he's funded by big business. But what he needs to do is throw money at the Rust Belt and the people that are really suffering, who believe this. They'll believe any garbage that Trump told them. He didn't do anything. He just talked the language. He talked the language that he wanted them to hear, they wanted to hear, while doing absolutely nothing for them practically, and ruling for big business like the Republicans have always done and the Democrats have always done. But he's got to throw money at the places who are really suffering, and he's got to close down. Sorry, I'm not a First Amendment person. He's got to close down if it spills out lies, if it spills out deliberate lies, anti-Semitism, racism, misogyny. It's got to be shut down. I'm not into your First Amendment. I'm into truth. I believe in truth. I don't believe that lies is free speech. Free speech is talking. Is reflecting what is actually happening in the world, rather than saying that 19 testicled. Okay, I'll do my poem. I'm doing your poem without any further ado. Okay, you can. This is called anti-social media. I wrote it the other day.
Yeah, go for it.
Here we go. A message to all followers of Trump and QAnon. We're on your case until the day your websites are all gone. Our mission will be over the day we hear you screech, my Parler account's vanished. Where's my freedom of speech? And when 8chan is history, we'll all have a big party with blood-drinking big tech moguls and the Illuminati. We're anywhere and everywhere, and all our plans are heinous. We are the 19-testicled space halibuts from Uranus. We're here to stop conspiracy theories and debunk fake news, because we're mates with Soros and in cahoots with the Jews, demanding fact-based thinking and intelligent debate to suck up to the vampires in the Hollywood deep state. Of course we support Antifa, and Black Lives Matter too. There's equal opportunities for all in our worldview. So who is it who wants your guns and petrol-guzzling cars, those 13-breasted, 16-nippled space turbots from Mars? There you go.
That's a beautiful poem.
I hope you know what halibuts and turbots are. I'm always aware of the. Do you have halibuts in the States? It's a sort of flatfish.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Halibut.
I do lots of poems about fish, and you know, using fish as metaphors, should we say?
No, that's a beautiful poem, and I totally get what you're saying. I mean, the problem becomes who is the authority determining what are the lies, and that's when you cross into.
Well, I would say that authority is me. And I mean,
I'd be okay with that. I mean, I'd be fine with that.
It's actually, I think, I actually think it is pretty easy to tell the difference between lies and truth. I mean, before the internet, we pretty, it was pretty well defined. I mean, now you've got this ridiculous nonsense from Trump talking about the Great Steal and all these millions of votes that were that were actually counted later because people didn't want to catch coronavirus, so they got mailed in ballots. And he set it all up like that. And now millions of people believe this nonsense. And you've got a huge, great problem on your hands. Now, I don't reckon that the stations which publish that bullshit should be allowed to broadcast. I mean, I think there's got to be, it's like, I don't believe freedom of speech for me is, you've got a right to sit in the pub and talk about 19 testicled space halibuts from Uranus running the world. That's fine. No one's saying you're going to get locked up for that, but you can't set up a blooming radio station and spew it out all over the place, because that's just ridiculous. I mean, if you do that, the basis of society breaks down. If you can't actually establish fact as fact, like, Trump lost the election, Biden won the election. The fact that there's, millions of Americans who think that's not true because a load of lies have been spread on big corporate channels is, to me, totally unacceptable, and a far worse option than, a few than the civil liberties lobby being a bit upset about a kind of filter on what actually constitutes valid electronic communication. I mean, again, I'm not a liberal. I'm an old school statist socialist. I toured East Germany 4 times before the wall came down. I mean, that's my perspective. So there you go.
No, I mean, hey, I hear you, and I mean, I think the free speech laws in the United States are pretty decent, and I think they should just be followed generally. But yeah, I mean, it's my thing. Getting back to what you were saying, just in regards to Joe Biden and whatnot, I was happy to see Trump go away. I wasn't happy to see Biden win. And we were in a very similar situation to you guys. Our Jeremy Corbyn was Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely, yeah.
We had a chance for an FDR style presidency, and instead we are getting another Reagan term. And Reagan terms are all we have had in my entire lifetime. So,
would you say that Biden is as bad as Reagan or Bush then?
I think he has the potential to be both. I mean, I think George W. Bush was by far the worst president in recent American history. I mean, I would say
even worse than Trump.
I would say so, yeah, just because he had more time to do more damage. I mean, George W. Bush, when you look at what the new American century did, when you look at what, the whole axis of evil, which was just based on lies, you sing about this stuff. Yeah, I talk about this stuff. That brought the United States and, quite frankly, the world down to its knees. And we're still feeling the effects of that. And Barack Obama was elected to kind of stop that. He didn't. He just kind of let it go. It was put on autopilot. He let it continue on autopilot. So did Trump. Biden's going to be more than happy to do the same thing. Americans still have not gotten a pandemic relief check yet, as of the Biden administration, but he already bombed Syria. It's pretty bleak here electorally. I mean, it's pretty. Let me ask you this, because this ties into your neck of the woods and mine. I've said this before. I would argue that, and I think the Tories are absolutely terrible, by the way. So when I say this, in no way am I saying the Tories aren't that bad. I'm just saying our political parties are even freaking worse. I would say that the Democratic Party in America is even more brutal than the Tories over in the UK. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't. No,
really?
No, not at all. I would say that certainly up until that Johnson took power, the Tories were, well, absolutely. I mean, what has changed in this country in the last months has been because of the pandemic. The Tories are absolutely, totally brutal.
Absolutely, I agree.
And what has changed is the pandemic has meant that they have been forced to adopt sort of social measures, which under normal circumstances they wouldn't even dream of, just to keep the basic infrastructure of the country functioning. But it's against all their instincts. When I look at when I look at the Democrats and the rank and file and the people on the streets voting, the people in Philly celebrating Black Lives Matter people, the troika of women, of radical leftist women, I see something very similar to the left of the Labour Party in the UK. When I look at when I look at Biden and the establishment of the Democratic Party,
which is
I
what I'm
see,
referring to.
yeah, I see something
Just
very akin to Blair or indeed Keir Starmer.
okay.
And I don't believe that Blair or Keir Starmer are anywhere near as bad as their equivalents. As the Tories, in the same way that if I have to be honest, I thought Obama was better than George Bush, and I think that Biden will be better than Trump. But I mean, as I've said already, it's the difference between a swimming pool full of sick and a bucket of sick. It's vomit, but it's just a bit less of it. So and the fact that all we are going for, all that we are offered, is differing amounts of sick. The no sick world is not on offer. That is the problem. And of course, the although within the Democratic Party, as within the Labour Party, I'm still in the Labour Party. There are a lot of good people. I mean, I don't know, what the answer.
Well, I'm not
For
talking
us
about the people though. Like I'm talking about like the establishment.
Yeah,
Like that's
absolutely.
kind of
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
just to
sure.
clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. I think that the Tories, and the Republicans are worse than Labour and the Democrats. But it is just, as I say, it's a matter of degree. And because they've moved so far to the right, you don't have to be left wing at all to be better than them. I mean, you can just be less far right. And that's the awful thing. I mean, the only thing I would say in terms of how it is here, and from what I saw, how it is over there, is that for many people of colour and for many people who've been, really absolutely totally shat on, there did seem to be a palpable sense of relief that Trump had gone, and that presumably has got to be in itself a good thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm happy he's gone. Don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled Trump's gone. I'm just I mean, we missed an opportunity of a lifetime that we may not get a second shot at with the way the United States works politically. I mean, that chance, and Bernie Sanders wasn't perfect. He had plenty of faults, but it was still a chance for his transformational presidency that we have not had since the 30s. I mean, that we have
Do
not
you think?
had. Go
Do
ahead.
you think that Sanders could have beaten Trump?
Yeah, I think he would have beat him both times. I mean, in 2016, Trump won because he sold the American people this complete lie about fake populism, this whole
Mm.
right wing populist thing. And he was making all these bogus promises to
Yeah,
working class people.
he said the things that obviously he got focus groups to tell him exactly what the
Yeah,
people in the Rust Belt states wanted to hear, and he told them exactly what they wanted to hear, and never had
totally.
any intention of doing anything to back that up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was all a bunch of baloney, but enough people bought it that he won. And in 2020, he didn't do any of that because he couldn't. I mean, he couldn't even fake it anymore. So instead, in 2020, he just started scaring people into, oh, it's socialism. Joe Biden is socialism, which is absolutely absurd. The only Marx Joe Biden has heard of is Groucho. But
Yeah,
he still sold people, tried to sell people that, and it didn't work because people were like, whatever, dude, you have to be gone because you have no idea how to handle this pandemic. You have no idea what you're doing. And people voted Trump out. And
although Trump got loads more votes than he did the first time, and the only reason that he got thrown out, was because the turnout was the highest you've ever had in the history of your country.
because for a change, we didn't suppress the vote the way we typically do. I mean that the big lesson to take away from 2020 was like, well, this is what happens when you don't do everything in your power to blatantly suppress the vote. If we made voting just a little bit easier, which in the pandemic, because of the pandemic, they made it a little bit easier, Attila. They didn't make it a lot easier. They made it a little bit easier. I don't if you ever go to vote here, it's like they open the doors, they're like, vote, and then close. But they made it a little bit easier, and that's what happened with turnout. And that's why I say the things I do. I mean, you say that the Tories were, they had to get on board with programs that they would never get on board with normally. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I know the Tories are awful, and you can fill me in even more on how awful they are because you live over there. But in the United States, we didn't even get on board with said programs. We didn't get an emergency UBI. We didn't get, I mean, we got a one-time $1,200 payment, and then later we got a one-time $600 payment. We were promised another payment out the door immediately. That payment still has not happened. And we were promised that payment by Joe Biden, who has not
Why
fulfilled
do you
that
think it
promise.
hasn't happened? Is it not happened because Joe Biden never intended it to happen, or has it not happened for other reasons?
Oh, but it's for a lot of reasons. I think that's part of it. I think in many ways he was just saying what he needed to do to win. I don't think he had any sincere intentions on making it happen. And also, there's some really despicable people in the Congress and in the Senate. And a lot, well, they're all Republicans, and a lot of them are Democrats too. And that's the system we have. I mean, we have two very far right-wing parties. I think if you really broke it down, I mean, Labor, I mean, there are some left-wing people who vote Democrat just because, what other choice do they have? But the Democrats as a platform are a right-wing party, and the Republicans as a platform are a neo-fascist party. And
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
not even
it's
an
quite clear.
embellishment.
The Republicans have moved far, 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 even further to the right than they were before, and the cult of Trump still seems to be in full swing.
Oh, they had a
And
golden shrine to him, man. Did you see? Did you
yeah, oh
see the
God, yeah, I
CPAC
saw that.
thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Oh,
don't. I
God.
mean, I'd imagine you got to keep our politics like at arm's length for your own. Like, like if I lived somewhere else, I don't think I would.
I mean, it's the absolute astonishment that many people feel listening to these people actually defending Trump was just beyond belief. I mean, and as I say, the problem is, when you've got an alternative which isn't any good, um, it kind of it becomes very tempting to just think that the alternative is going to be better than it is, simply because what you've got is such actual shit. Which is why, as I say, I've done the I did the poem. I've done the analogy with the sick, because it is like, it's two different grades of vomit that you're talking about, and that's
Well,
it.
the problem is that the vomit keeps getting worse and worse. Like when you keep going lesser of two evils, it keeps shifting to be worse and worse to the point where, like here in the United States, I mean, we're to the point where it's like Don Jr. is going to run as a Democrat, and the Republicans are just going to run a hologram of Mussolini. Like it's getting absolutely insane. But well, let me ask you this, because I want to get more of your take from what's going on over there in your guys' system. Like the main two pillars are the Tories and Labor, but there is more of a presence of smaller third parties. Like how does that work exactly? And how would like third parties grow in your country, and what's kind of
Well,
going on there?
for years now, I've been campaigning for a proportional representation, which
Hmm.
is basically simply like they have in everywhere else in mainland Europe, where the number of votes that a party get is proportionate to the amount of seats that they get. Whereas what we have is the first past the post system. So we have 650 constituencies, and each constituency has its own election when you have a general election. And if the Tories get 29,000, Labour get 28,999, the Liberal Democrats get 28,998, and the Greens get 28,997, the Tories get in, even though they've only got four more votes than all the other parties. So they get in with 25% of the vote, which is obviously a very extreme example. But basically, what we have is one right-wing party, effectively the Tories, and then on the left, well, supposedly on the left, you've obviously got Labour, you've got the Liberal Democrats, who are useless, but not as bad as the Tories. You've got the Greens, who are good, but and what happens is that people get pissed off with Labour, rightly, because of their stuff is what they're talking is nonsense. So they vote Green, and for every person who votes Green instead of Labour, that doesn't help the Green Party. All it is, it's one less vote for the party that actually has a chance of beating the Tories, because the Greens will never win an election, except maybe that's not true. They actually do. They win one constituency, which is near us in Brighton. But generally, the Greens have nowhere near the support of Labour. All that happens is it's the exact similar thing as what happened with Ralph Nader when obviously when what's his name, stood against Bush, um, when Nader stood as a Green or an ecology candidate and split the vote. In other words, if you added Nader's vote to who was it? It was John Kerry. Was it John Kerry? Who am I talking? Who am I
Well,
thinking?
the first time was Al Gore, and in
Yeah, Al Gore.
reality,
That's it. Of course,
Al
Al
Gore
Gore.
actually won that election. I mean, they screwed him over. I mean, that they reported it early, and it's
But Al Gore was the same election as Ralph Nader stood for the Green Party. Is that right? It is right.
uh he was either a Green or an independent, but yeah, he
Well,
was
okay,
definitely in the
whatever he
election.
was, if you added Nader's votes to Gore's votes, then Gore would have won the election. And that is exactly the same thing that happens at every single election in this country. Basically, the Tories are now in power with 42% of the vote. And there is just about a left wing, or if you like, a left of centre majority against them. But at the moment, all that's happening is Labour are arguing with each other, the Scottish nationalists are arguing with each other. Um, and it's chaos. I mean, conventional kind of mainstream bourgeois politics is an absolute nightmare. And for years, people like me have been looking for an alternative. But unless you're actually going to go for revolution, let's face it, it ain't going to happen. Then you're dealing with a situation where the moment you set up an independent organisation, a different party, you're confronted with the electoral system. And obviously in the States, you're confronted with the reality of this massive great two-party monolith, which is impossible to get through. So, it's for me, I'm still in the Labour Party and I'm still spreading this message. Let's hold together. Let's stand and let's try and stay together as a party with a reasonably progressive platform, and get rid of the Tories. Sadly, as I just said to you today, we had the budget where the Tories were actually putting in more kind of pro ordinary people policies than Labour was suggesting. Now they're doing that for very cynical reasons, but if Labour can be outflanked by the Tories, it just shows how useless the Labour Party in its current state is. And that has been ever since, obviously, Corbyn was removed and Keir Starmer became leader. And it's just really sad because, like over there, we had a real opportunity for real change when Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party. And that has gone exactly the same way that if you'd had Bernie Sanders, if he'd managed to beat Trump, then you would have been in a completely different situation. I mean, and I understand what you mean about Sanders, because Sanders would have genuinely appealed to a lot of that blue collar vote who were prepared to just listen to anything Trump said and think, oh, he's one of us because he says this stuff, even though he's a billionaire. And so they just went. But if Sanders had actually been able to put across those ideas, in places like Pittsburgh or whatever, then
That's where I'm from.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
from
I did
Pittsburgh.
one of my best gigs was in Pittsburgh. I mean, I did.
Oh, cool, man.
And all the gigs I've done about 20, 25, maybe 30 gigs in the States. One of the very best ones was in some community centre in Pittsburgh. So I've got a sort of a varied following from very, very, very tiny to not too bad.
It's a blue collar place, man. It's a union
Yeah,
town, so yeah,
yeah,
I can
absolutely.
see that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I understand. Like, it's two, it's two different systems, and there are some parallels. I mean, I would say that in 2000, and I don't want to harp on this too much, but Nader. I don't. It's not accurate to call Nader a spoiler, because in reality, a lot of those votes that he got, they were people who would have stayed home otherwise. So they
right.
weren't people who just were like, "Oh, well, I was going to vote for Gore, but now I'm going to go vote for Nader." No, they were people who wouldn't have voted and then
Right.
voted for Nader. And in reality, that election was straight up stolen. And I mean, the Electoral College is something we still have that really shouldn't exist.
I know. I
And
mean,
had
that is completely insane. I mean, the
yeah,
first time you try and explain to people that I mean, even Hillary Clinton, who's probably the worst Democrat candidate in the entire history of the United States,
it's
got
possible.
3 million votes more than Trump and didn't become president because of the Electoral College,
Yeah,
which basically means that the vote of some hillbilly in Oklahoma or whatever is worth the votes of 3 professors from California, which seems pretty bollocks to me, to be honest. I understand why they did it. I mean, I'm quite a student of American history. I mean, I've always been interested in American history and the incredible diverse culture. I mean, when I was 9 or 10 in the UK, this is back in the 60s, they had these cards called Civil War News that you got with bubble gum. and it told the story of the American Civil War in quite gory detail. And I collected them all, and I did a project when I was a kid on the Civil War, and I've always been interested in that. And of course, the fault lines and the divisions that were there then, you see quite clearly reflected today in terms of the different demographics, the different areas, different perspectives. You know, there's no sort of coincidence that the places that I've performed mainly when I've been in the States have been, you know, on the East Coast and West Coast, near the top, and bits in the middle, but I haven't been down south at all.
Well, there's some great. I mean, the United States is an interesting place, man. There are amazing pockets everywhere, and there are great people everywhere, and there are shitty people everywhere.
Sure,
You know, no matter who you are, no matter your background, it should be one person, one vote. That's you know,
absolutely.
That's the way it should be. So, I want to ask you, first of all, would you do another poem for us?
Sure, I'll do this one.
Sweet.
This is for the I'm sure you got anti-vaxxers. I mean that bollocks about being controlled by a vaccine. I mean, I'll do the poem first of all, anyways, because I had mine 10 days ago, because I'm 63 with underlying health conditions. So we've done I've got to say, the moment they handed the vaccination program over to the people, to the NHS, and took it out of the hands of profiteering private companies, it's been a real success, and it looks like it's working. Post-jab poem. I haven't had a message from Bill Gates. I still don't have Illuminati mates. When cycling, still wear black drain pipes, not lycra. The chips Rabina feeds me still aren't micra. No constant urge to buy stuff at IKEA or switch to nat urine from Popper beer, because I've had a jab into my arm to save my weakened lungs from virus harm. This loud and forceful poet will not be told that I am somehow sheep-like and controlled because I wear a mask for common good and do the things that caring people should. And though in stroppy rhymes I am well versed, I'm proud to say society comes first, and every single arm should be injected so all the vulnerable can be protected. Cheers.
When did you do the 2 thing, or when's your second?
Sorry?
Did you do the?
Oh yeah, but second one's in about 10 weeks now, and I'll do you another one as well. Hang on a minute, I've got another.
All right.
This one's about Brexit. Oh look, my mouse needs new batteries. I still don't. But yeah, I got a poem about. Come on. All technical things. No, that one's not working. So I'll do this one instead. It's a bit of grime for you, a bit of rap. 40s in rhyme, 38 full time. I'm still in my prime. Life's been sublime. I could use some music. Someone else could choose it. If it's to me flowing, you got it, won't refuse it. Maybe not the done thing. Maybe it's a young thing. I don't shit no gun thing. No bad Kim Jong Un thing. I'm into enlighten. Represented Brighton. Now we're in the Premier League. Who are we going to frighten? Mine's a southernmost. I'm from the Sussex coast. Hoser in the garden said the bread is simply toast. Don't give me no cup of tea when I'm getting uppity. Beer is my cup of tea. High specific gravity. Like the wind I'm blowing, like a river flowing. 40 years and knowing exactly where I'm going. 60 on the planet. Spoken when I span it. Ranting verse I ran it. Seagull, not organic. Old punk on a new trip. Not a special brew trip, not a disnew chip, not a stiffing glue chip. Checking out fresh styles, bringing tears and smiles from the Outer Hebrides to the Seven Dials. Beer I like it hoppy, verse I like it stroppy. Sometimes I get personal, but I don't like it soppy. I remember Brother D. Grandmaster was legendary, but U-Roy was the first to show. Toaster started off this flow, ranting verse, reggae chat, hip-hop, grime and all of that. Recently spoken word, voices shouting to be heard. Respect to my fellow man from Cooper Clark to Yellow Man, Stormzy, Tempest and Luke Wright. Spoken word is doing all right. When I began, there was no scene. Looking back on all that's been, 40 years of chatting rhyme, having a fantastic time. Cheers.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Those are great.
There you go.
All right, so I'm gonna say something, and now you're gonna hate me, which really bums me out because I've been a fan of yours for a long time. But I decided I was gonna tell you the truth. So you ready for this, okay. Attila?
Yeah, kind of far away.
My team is Florentina. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
That's okay.
I mean, it's all right. I mean, you know, I don't hate you. I mean, my team,
family's Italian.
Right, cool. Well, the team I ever saw in Italy is Livorno. They are the
left wing team.
It's the left wing Port Town team, which is aligned to my favourite German team, FC St. Pauli. And of course, I'm from Brighton. I'm a huge supporter of Brighton of Albion, and we've got a pretty left wing fan base as well. And obviously, we're from the coast too. But yeah, I've got no problem with Fiorentina. I've never been to Florence, but my wife and I have been to Venice many times. I've seen Unione Venezia play and Virtus Verona, but never been to Florence. Been around the northern parts mainly, but not Florence yet. But yeah,
Well, and have to
yeah, I guess
understand that the whole political connection, that's for someone from the States, that's something I still don't fully like. That's something we don't have here. So I could actually.
The Portland Timbers have got a pretty anti-fascist following, haven't they?
I guess that's true. I mean, it depends on where you look, but overall, it's like we wouldn't. If you even said like a team like that, oh, they're a left-wing team, right? Like people wouldn't really, that wouldn't stir a lot of people. They'd be like,
Yeah,
what do you mean? Like just soccer. What are you talking? Which we call it soccer over here.
Of course, I know. I understand the whole dynamic of that. I mean, you play rugby. Your national sport is rugby backwards with silly shoulder pads.
Yeah.
I used to play rugby when I was a kid, and I understand. I understand what you call football. I've watched it. I'm a sports fan. I've watched it quite a few times. I find it bizarre because of all the ad breaks and the huge amounts of time when nothing's going on. But yes, I can watch a game of football. And I don't really have a favourite team. I used to like the Washington Redskins until I realised that was a pretty unfortunate name. Which that was at the time. I liked the Washington Redskins because one of our best anti-fascist bands in the 80s was a red skinhead band called the Redskins. I don't know if you've heard of them. Of course, it was only recently that the term Redskin became, identified as being a racist or pejorative term in terms of the consciousness that I'm aware of. So of course, the Washington have changed their name now anyway, which is good. I'm aware of that. So yeah, I mean. No, I mean, my favorite US band is I've got to say is Rancid. I absolutely love Rancid.
Oh, I love Rancid. Yeah.
I think Tim Armstrong is a wonderful songwriter, and what I really love I like people that do different things, because he writes in so many different styles, and I mean, my own little way, I do the same. I write rap songs, I write punk songs, I write sort of talk over reggae stuff, and I've got my band combines early music and punk, so I play a lot of medieval instruments. And we combine that with punk a bit same sort of way that the Pogues combined Irish music and punk. So anyway, it's all for people. If people are interested, I'm on my Facebook page is the main one. In fact, just put Attila the Stockbroker into Facebook, you'll find me. But I've got loads on YouTube as well. Not stuff that I've put up, but other people have put up. And so I'm all over the internet if people are interested in watching this. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've got a sort of a global cult following, if you like. And I've been living at it for 40 years or 38 years. So, it's good.
I was going to tell you a quick story if you want to hear it. Because
Sure.
so when I was first getting into football, football, I just kind of clung to the Italian teams because that was all I got to watch, and I would watch AC Milan a lot because they were just, one of the more popular teams and they were really good.
Oh, yeah.
So I got an AC Milan jersey. And again, the whole political connection thing, I didn't know any of that. Like that, I didn't know that was a thing. I was like 19 years old, 20 years old. Yeah, so I'm over in Italy visiting. What's up?
Politics in Italy in football is huge.
I didn't know that.
Most of it is far right as well.
Yeah, and AC Milan is a right-wing team. And I didn't know there was such a thing as that, And so I'm wearing a Milan jersey in Italy with my family, and they're kind of looking at me a little weird, and people on the street are looking at me weird. And I'm like, wow, they must take the rivalry seriously. And then my cousin asks me, he goes, do you like Bush? Because Bush was the president at the time. And I said, no, not at all. Why do you ask me? And they're like, oh, we thought you did. And I'm like, why did you think that? And they were like, your shirt. And I'm like, what does my shirt have to do with the United States president? And then they explained all that to me, and I learned something new. I didn't know that. So they gave me a Napoli jersey, and I started wearing that. So that my C League team is Napoli because of family, and I know they're a center left team as well. And then I also like Fiorentina because of family, which to my knowledge is also a center left team, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think so. Yeah,
that whole thing's interesting. I mean, because it's like we don't really. Because my cousin asked me, he goes, are the Pittsburgh Steelers a Democrat team? Or I'm like, that's not a thing.
Yeah, so, sure. I mean, absolutely. No, it's the same in England. There's not an awful lot of that. I mean, we're we're definitely left of centre in terms of the general perspective, because we're from a very cosmopolitan city, which is the gay capital of the UK, Brighton. But no, there's no real politics in our football. The same.
So that's not well. Who else? So Italy has it. It does do the. Is that what other countries have that? Like,
Well, most in terms of football in Europe, a lot of countries do. I mean, Germany most certainly. I mean, St. Pauli,
okay,
who I've performed for 20 times in their stadium and all around. They're really they are the pioneering punk rock left wing anti-fascist football club, and they're brilliant. So the smaller team in Hamburg, the big one's HSV, what we call the Volksparkschweine, the Volkspark Pigs. But St. Pauli they were the pioneers of it. But yeah, I mean. In France, Italy, Spain, especially, I would say, you find and you find that and also horribly in Poland, Russia, a lot of Eastern Europe, and sadly, nearly all the teams there, not all but nearly all, have got right wing, far right sort of followers because of all the shit that's been going on in Eastern Europe for the last 30 years since the wall came down, where basically they had a sort of primitive socialist economy which was wrecked, and for a lot of people it's just not got better since. There's an awful lot of people that are really disillusioned, and really and obviously, as happens so much as happens in the States and the UK, they take it out on immigrants. They take it out on the people that they look at the people coming, and think of them as being responsible for the shit that they're in, rather than it actually being capitalism, the economic system that we live in under that does that.
so once this is all over, are you going to be touring again? And then I know this is kind of a basic question, but I'm just curious, just because you have done so much. Where's your favorite place to play?
Right, in terms of the touring, I mean, I'm going to be. You can probably hear. I mean, I have a lung condition which is mildly debilitating. I'm having inhalers, but I mean, I've cycled 20 miles here, 20 miles 2 days ago, and 15 miles yesterday. So it's not that bad, but I can only cycle on the flat. But I've got to be really careful about not getting this virus. And obviously, once the inoculations and once the vaccinations are finished, if it really does look as though it's been defeated, then yeah, I'll be touring again. Whether I can tour much in mainland Europe after Brexit, I mean, basically Brexit has completely screwed things up for us, for performers, because we're going to have to get work permits for every country we go to. We're going to have to get carnets for our instruments. I mean, it's like going into the States. I've toured in the States, 4 times. I never, you're supposed to get a work permit to go there. I never did that. I just went in as a tourist. My brother-in-law lives in Philadelphia, so there's a pretty good excuse there, as it were. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be much more difficult to tour mainland Europe. But I mean, I'm going to be touring still. I'm going to be doing. I mean, I've done 100 gigs a year for 40 years. This last year, I've done none. I'm really looking forward to getting back. I mean, at the same time, this is the first time in 40 years that I've been at home all the time. That I've just been in one place for a year. I'm going to do a poem about that. Because the 8th of September last year was the 40th anniversary of my first gig, and I wrote this poem for my wife, Rabina. It's like a poem of discovery. It's called "To My Wife in Lockdown," 8th of September 2020. For 40 years today, I've lived this life, travelled the world for concerts far and wide. For half that time, my love, you've been my wife, a glorious inspiration at my side. A quarter of the year or more apart. For me, a time to rant, for you to rest. Then I return to you, my loving heart, resume our path together, two abreast. When lockdown hit, at first I was bereft, though I believed it should have come before. My travelling days through all the years were gone. The gigs I built my life around no more. I thought, then wrote, then learned to broadcast live, though IT still remains a fickle friend. My office, now the gateway to my world, a world I first feared would come to an end. But now we were together all the time. Strong characters faced with a brand new test. My table manners and the toothpaste stop. This tireless tongue which never seems to rest. But all our days were filled with love and fun. We never thought something will have to give. We looked into each other's eyes and said, no one I'd rather be in lockdown with. I loved to watch our garden as it grew, not sometimes this year, every single day. Tomatoes from the seed to bright red fruit, green beans to freezer from the starting tray. When lockdown eased a bit and summer came, my childhood days returned, my rods, my bike. A few hours apart, now all we need. A night apart, now something not to like. One day, I hope, I'll hit the road again. One day our peace and quiet will return. But this great revelation in our love, enforced by fate, was wonderful to learn. So, darling, thanks for marrying me full time, this stroppy poet, loud of mouth and arse. And as my valediction in this rhyme, I hereby dub you comrade wife, first class. Cheers.
That's beautiful, man. Did your wife
Yeah.
like it?
Sorry? Oh, she loves it. She loves it.
Aw.
I hope there might be a couple of references in there that, I mean, one of the things that David says to me, he says, you know, John, your poetry, if you read it in American, it doesn't rhyme. Because of course your inflections and accent is different. I get that, I understand. But I'm sure you get there. I'm sure you get there. So yeah, cool.
Cheers, man. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And yeah, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Where can people go to learn more about you? And you mentioned this earlier, but please reiterate when and where is the live stream taking place for anyone who might want to tune in?
Right. Okay. So I do regular live streams. My next one's on Sunday. In fact, I'm doing one on Friday. I'm doing a live stream from my port. I live right next to Shore and Port on the Sussex coast. And I'm doing a live stream through the port on Friday, poetic live stream talking about, because I've written a lot of poetry about where I live, stories from childhood. You know, I'm 63. I've got a long history. But you know, I do loads of live streams, do loads of blogs. I write about current events. It's all at facebook.com/Attila the Stockbroker. Now I know that people, your generation, is less like to use Facebook, but there's a lot of people on there, and I've got a big following on there, and it's the one that is easiest for me to understand, and it works. I mean, I reach a lot of people. So if you put Attila the Stockbroker into Attila the Stockbroker into any search engine, you'll come up with my website, my Facebook page, my Bandcamp page where all my books and CDs are. I shall put this. I've copied the URL. I'm going to put this onto share this on Facebook and on my Twitter pages as well, if that's all right with you. Is that right? Will that come out if I just stick it on there now, or will you send me the link afterwards?
Yeah. I'll just it's just youtube.com/Romplacone.
There's certainly hundreds of people that will be interested to listen to this. As I say, I've got 35,000 people on there in total.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm all over the internet, and I will be performing live again. I do a mixture of the type of poems that you've just heard, some rap, some blank verse, and a lot of songs ranging from sort of nice quiet acoustic ones to thrashy punk rock ones and early music. I do lots. I say I'm all over I've been doing this a long time. I'm all over the internet for those who are interested, and it's been lovely to come on. Where are you in? Are you in San Francisco? Where are you? Where
Los
are you?
Angeles.
You're in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
Los Angeles, Southern California. It's
yeah, I've played. I've played once in LA. I remember the place I remember playing the most was with David, because he did it deliberately because he knows I'm really into craft beer. So we did loads and loads of craft beer pubs and played in the St. Louis Brewery and the Harvard Brewery in Massachusetts. It was brilliant. I love your IPAs, but you can't have an American IPA before if you 3 American IPAs, and I'm anybody's. I mean, it's. But I love my IPAs. I love hoppy beers, and you've really picked up on this over there. In fact, one of my greatest beer friends, Alex Hall, who co-runs because I run a beer and music festival called Glastonbury. He was one of the pioneers. He met and married an American lawyer from New York City, and about 13 years ago, he went over to, just at the beginning of the craft beer explosion. Alex went over to New York and was involved in setting up a lot of the beer engines in the new places over there. And it's great over there, you know, because obviously American beer used to be absolute urine of Satan, but now you've got some of the
mass-produced stuff's pretty bad.
Now you got some of the best beers in the world over there. It's brilliant. I was hoping when you were reading out your sponsors, I was thinking, where's the craft brewery sponsor? I know you got tea and oil. So
I'm working on it. I'd love that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
I'm a huge beer fan. Beer, music, poetry, football.
sounds like a hell of a weekend.
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely.
like a great time, man. Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. The LA has a lot of great microbrew stuff going on. I mean, it's one of the big cities of the country or whatever. But it's actually, if you go down to San Diego, that's
Right.
where like a ton. And I don't know why in particular. I mean, both have an equal shortage of water, as far as I know. But San Diego is like really one of the capitals. They got
We
so
visited
much.
when I was there in 2000 and whenever it was, but a while ago, we visited the Sierra Nevada brewery. I think that's in Chico. But at that point, it wasn't the massive, great big corporate monster that it is now. The beer's still good, but it's no longer an independent. It's pretty corporate now, isn't it? Sierra Nevada. Still
I
nice.
believe so.
Still a nice
Yeah.
beer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much for doing this. Everyone,
No,
check it out over on Facebook. And you guys know the drill here. Get Your News On with Ron. We'll be back Monday for a full Get Your News On with Ron stream. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace. Peace, everybody.
cheers, mate. All the best.